It started quietly. No explosions, no breaking news. Just a strange signal, caught by a machine no one paid much attention to. A satellite floating near Neptune, listening to the silence of space. For years, that satellite had picked up nothing unusual. It was part of the Deep Space Network, a group of listening stations spread across the solar system. Its job was to record patterns, background radiation, and any radio noise that might help scientists learn more about the universe. But one day, it caught something that didn't belong. At first, the signal seemed like random noise, a steady pulsing beat that repeated every 27 seconds. The computer tagged it as anomalous data and stored it for later review. When a technician back on Earth checked the logs, she frowned. The signal wasn't like anything she had seen before. It wasn't natural. It had structure, rhythm, and intention. She sent it to the research team in Geneva for analysis. They thought it might be interference or maybe some stray broadcast from Earth bouncing back through space. But after weeks of study, that theory didn't hold. The source wasn't near Earth. It came from far beyond, from the direction of Alpha Centauri. The more they listened, the clearer it became. The pulses weren't random. They carried information like coded language. Scientists worked day and night trying to decode the message. They used AI programs, translation models, even old mathematics from early SETI research. Nothing made full sense. Until someone noticed the repetition of prime numbers hidden in the pattern. That changed everything. Prime numbers are a universal language, something only intelligent beings would send. It meant that whoever sent this message wanted to be understood. Months passed. News of the signal leaked, even though governments tried to keep it secret. Soon everyone was talking about it. Social media filled with theories, aliens, hoaxes, secret military tests, or even messages from future humans. But none of that could explain what came next. After nearly a year of decoding, the message was finally translated. It was short, simple, and terrifying. Do not approach the Centauri sector. The Empire has claimed this region. Further intrusion will be met with force. That was it. No introduction, no greeting, no explanation. Just a warning. Cold, direct, and final. When the translation was made public, the world went silent for a moment. Then came panic. Talk shows exploded with arguments. Religious leaders called it a sign from heaven. Scientists called it proof of intelligent life. Governments called emergency meetings. Some people were afraid, others were thrilled, but no one was indifferent. Humanity had received its first direct message from another civilization, and it wasn't friendly. The United Earth Council was formed to handle the situation. It was made up of representatives from every major nation, along with scientists, engineers, and linguists. Their mission, to decide what to do next. For months, they debated behind closed doors. Some leaders said humanity should stay away, that the warning was clear and it would be foolish to ignore it. Others argued that curiosity was what made humans human. They said we couldn't live in fear of something we didn't understand. Outside those meetings, the world was restless. Protests filled cities, some demanding exploration, others calling for silence. Conspiracy groups claimed governments were hiding the real message. Religious followers gathered in temples and churches, praying that whatever was out there would not come to destroy them. Meanwhile, in a quiet lab somewhere in Switzerland, a linguist kept staring at the message. She believed the warning wasn't just a threat. It was a test. Maybe the so-called Empire wanted to see how humans would react. Would we obey out of fear, or would we try to understand? That thought spread among scientists. Soon an idea began to take shape. What if they sent a ship, not to invade, not to fight, but to explore? Humanity had built faster-than-light prototypes before, though none had ever been tested beyond the outer planets. Maybe now was the time. The proposal was called Project Aegis. It was a joint effort between nations, space agencies, and private companies. The mission was simple. Send an expedition toward the Centauri sector to investigate the source of the signal, and to show the universe that humanity was not afraid. The project faced huge resistance. Many called it suicide. Politicians warned it could start an interstellar war, but others said it was destiny. After all, when has humanity ever turned away from the unknown? In the end, the decision came down to one vote in the council. The vote passed, barely. The mission was approved. The ship they built was unlike anything before. Long, sleek, and built with hybrid propulsion, it could fold spacetime, allowing it to travel between stars in years instead of centuries. It was named Dauntless. The name said everything. Brave, determined, unwilling to yield. The crew was selected carefully. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and communicators, all trained to face the unknown. Each one knew the risks. There were no promises of return, only a mission that could change the course of human history forever. Before the launch, there was a speech broadcast to the entire planet. The speaker stood in front of the Dauntless, shining silver under the light of a cold morning sky. The words were simple. We may be warned, but we are not weak. We may be told to stay away, but curiosity is stronger than fear. This is what makes us human. The world watched in silence as the engines ignited. The ground trembled and the ship slowly lifted off, climbing higher and higher until it disappeared into the stars. Some people cried. Others cheered. Many just stood there wondering if they had just witnessed the beginning of something beautiful, or the end of everything. Weeks turned into months. The Dauntless sent back regular updates at first, routine system checks, navigation reports, and video logs of life on board. The crew seemed calm, even excited. They were the first humans to travel beyond known space. But as the ship moved closer to the Centauri boundary, the updates grew shorter. Then they stopped completely. For several weeks, there was silence. No data, no signals, no contact. The world began to fear the worst. News outlets ran endless coverage. Has the Dauntless been destroyed? Did the Galactic Empire make good on their warning? Was humanity's first step into the stars also its last? Then suddenly one last message arrived. Short, distorted, but unmistakable. It came from the ship itself, auto-transmitted by an emergency beacon. The message read, "We have crossed the boundary. Space is changing. Something is here. We are not alone." Then nothing. The signal cut off. On Earth, people waited, days, weeks, months, but no further message came. The Dauntless was gone, but humanity had changed. Even though fear filled every heart, there was something else growing beneath it, a stubborn kind of hope. We had reached the edge of the unknown and looked into the darkness. Even if we lost contact, we had proven something to ourselves. We dared to go. No one knew what really happened out there. Some said the Dauntless was destroyed. Others believed the crew made contact and was still out there somewhere beyond human reach. But one thing was clear. The universe had spoken, and we had answered. The Galactic Empire had tried to intimidate us, but humanity didn't back down. We came anyway, and that was just the beginning. The silence from the Dauntless stretched on longer than anyone expected. Days turned into months and then into years. The first wave of hope slowly turned into quiet sorrow. Many began to believe the crew had been lost, swallowed by the same space that had once inspired them. But humanity didn't stop looking. Even when no signals came back, the tracking stations kept their antennas aimed at the Centauri direction. Every now and then they caught faint echoes, tiny blips that might have been data fragments or maybe just interference. Still, people refused to give up. The world had changed since the Dauntless vanished. Space exploration became a global effort. Nations that once competed now worked together. The warning from the so-called Galactic Empire had done something unexpected. It united humanity under a single goal, understanding what lay beyond. 10 years after the Dauntless left, the United Earth Council built a new facility high in the Andes Mountains. There, scientists worked on advanced communication systems that could detect even the weakest signals. They called it the Listening Wall. Its huge antennas could pick up whispers from across the stars. One cold morning, while a storm rolled through the mountains, one of those antennas detected something. It was faint and broken, but familiar. The pattern matched the Dauntless communication signature. At first, the control room froze. Then people jumped to action, running diagnostics, checking for errors. But the data was real. After all these years, the Dauntless was still out there, and alive. The signal carried a simple message. We have crossed the border. The stars here are different, but we are safe, for now. Those few words were enough to shake the entire planet. The story spread like fire. The crew was alive, somewhere near the boundary of the Centauri sector, the same region the Empire had warned humanity not to enter. Excitement returned. The Council held new meetings, this time with a tone of confidence. The fear that once held humanity back was fading. They decided to send a second expedition, not just to find the Dauntless, but to continue what had started. But not everyone agreed. Many still believed the warning was serious, not a bluff. They said the first ship survived by luck, and another mission might provoke something far worse. Others argued that curiosity had already taken humanity this far. If they stopped now, fear would rule the future. The arguments went on for months. Yet in the end, the decision was the same as before: move forward. While the new mission was being planned, the original Dauntless signal returned again. This time it was longer. The voice on the transmission sounded calm but weary. "We have seen their territory. There are signs of technology, vast, ancient. We cannot describe it. It is not abandoned but quiet, like someone is watching." Those words sent chills through everyone who heard them. It wasn't clear who they were, but everyone knew the meaning: the Galactic Empire. Even though the crew didn't mention an attack, the tone of the message carried unease. It was as if they knew they were being warned again, this time not through words but through presence. The council asked for more details, but no new signals came. Once again, the line went silent. Meanwhile, a new ship was ready. Bigger, stronger, and equipped with technology the Dauntless never had. It was built not just to explore, but to communicate safely across long distances. People hoped it could finally make contact with whatever was out there. The crew chosen for this second mission trained for years. They studied alien languages, learned about psychology and isolation, and prepared for possible first contact. No one called it a military mission, but the ship still carried defensive systems just in case. Before launch, the new captain addressed the world. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the same spark that once pushed the first explorers across oceans. "Fear kept us in the dark for too long," he said, "but we are not made to live afraid. The universe is not an enemy. It's a question waiting for an answer." And once again, the world watched a ship rise toward the stars. The launch was smoother this time, almost routine. People had seen it before, yet the feeling was no less emotional. Somewhere out there, the first crew was still alive, or so everyone hoped. The second ship traveled for years. It followed the same route the Dauntless took, tracing its path through the emptiness of interstellar space. Along the way, the crew sent regular updates: engine status, life readings, and small clips of them floating in the cabin, laughing and sharing meals. Everything felt peaceful, almost ordinary. Until they reached the boundary, the same invisible line mentioned in the alien warning. At first, nothing unusual happened. The stars looked the same. But as they moved deeper, strange things began to occur. Their navigation readings started to shift slightly, as if space itself was bending. Lights flickered, and the temperature inside the ship fluctuated for no reason. Then, the scanners picked up something massive ahead, so large that it didn't appear as an object but as a distortion in the darkness. It wasn't a planet or a ship. It was more like a wall made of light, stretching endlessly in every direction. The crew slowed down and activated external cameras. The image that came through was unlike anything seen before. Thousands of geometric shapes floating together, forming patterns that changed and rearranged constantly. It wasn't natural, it was built. Suddenly, a low hum filled the ship. The communication systems turned on by themselves. A voice came through, not human, but clear. "You were warned." The words echoed through every speaker. The crew froze. No one moved. The voice continued. "This region belongs to the Empire. Turn back or face consequences." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then the captain replied calmly, "We come in peace. We only seek knowledge." There was no response, only silence. Then the shapes outside the ship began to move closer, glowing brighter, surrounding the vessel like a web of light. It wasn't an attack, but it wasn't a welcome either. The ship's power flickered and one of the engines shut down. The voice returned, colder this time. "This is your final warning, leave." The captain ordered all systems to record everything, every signal, every image. He knew even if they didn't survive, Earth needed to know what was out there. Then, just as quickly as it started, everything stopped. The lights faded. The hum disappeared. The geometric wall pulled back and vanished into the stars. The ship's systems came back online, and for the first time the crew saw something in the distance, a faint light, moving slowly toward them. It wasn't a star. It was another ship. It took hours before they could confirm it, but the markings were clear. It was the Dauntless. The crew erupted in cheers. After all these years, the lost ship was here. Damaged but alive. They tried sending a signal, but the Dauntless didn't respond. Its engines were cold and only one faint light blinked from its hull. They approached carefully, scanning for life. Inside they could see movement. Figures through the observation glass. The Dauntless crew was there, waving slowly as if exhausted but alive. The second crew prepared to dock. But before they could connect, the same voice returned one last time. "You were warned. Do not test our patience." Then the signal cut off again. The light wall vanished completely and the stars returned to normal. The crew stood in silence, unsure if they had just been spared or threatened. Still, they finished docking. The hatch opened with a hiss and the two crews finally met, human to human after years apart. No one spoke at first. They just looked at each other, trying to believe it was real. The lost explorers had survived. They looked older, thinner, but their eyes carried stories no one else could imagine. When they finally spoke, their words were simple. "We saw them. They are real. And they are watching." The message was clear. Humanity had entered a new chapter. The Galactic Empire wasn't just a rumor. It was a reality. And now they knew humanity existed too. The world was about to change again. For a few long moments, no one spoke. The crew members of both ships stood there in silence, staring at each other through the connecting airlock. The air between them felt heavy, filled with things that words couldn't express. Years of distance, fear, and waiting. All of it ended in that single moment. When the first handshake finally happened, it wasn't planned. It was just instinct. One tired explorer reached out and another reached back. The touch was small, but it carried the weight of everything humanity had endured. Inside the Dauntless, the air was thin and dry. The lights flickered weakly and the walls were scratched from years of repair. The crew looked older than their years, their faces pale and eyes distant. They had survived on minimal supplies and recycled air, never knowing if anyone back home still remembered them. They gathered in the main control room, sitting together as the two captains exchanged stories. The second crew had 1,000 questions, but the Dauntless team spoke slowly, carefully, as if afraid that saying too much might bring the past rushing back. They explained that after crossing the boundary years ago, their ship had been trapped in a strange field, a kind of energy barrier that distorted space and time. Days and months didn't feel the same. The closer they moved toward the source of the signal, the more their instruments failed. Then one night, a massive shape appeared in front of them. It wasn't a planet or a station. It was something else, something alive or at least aware. A structure the size of a moon, glowing faintly like molten glass surrounded by thousands of smaller lights. And from that direction they had received the voice, the same one that now everyone on Earth knew. At first they thought it was just a recording, a warning. But soon the voice changed. It began responding to their transmissions, asking questions, testing their knowledge. It wanted to know where humanity came from, how far we had traveled, and why we dared to enter that region. The crew had answered honestly. They came to learn, not to conquer. They wanted to understand who had sent the warning. The voice didn't believe them at first. It called them wanderers from a young world and told them the stars they were crossing belonged to the Empire, an alliance of countless civilizations that had existed long before humans ever looked up at the sky. When the Dauntless asked for proof, the voice showed them. One of the walls of their ship transformed into a display of light, revealing images beyond imagination, entire galaxies filled with energy lines, massive starships drifting through cosmic fields, and cities that floated above gas giants like living islands. It was beautiful but also overwhelming. Humanity had dreamed of meeting other life, but no one expected it to be this vast or this organized. The voice identified itself as a messenger, not a ruler. It said it was part of the Galactic Order of Varn, a civilization that maintained peace through control. According to it, every time a new species tried to expand too far, chaos followed. The Empire's job was to stop that from happening. To the Dauntless crew, that sounded like fear, not peace. They realized the Empire saw humanity as a potential threat, not an equal. That's why the warning was sent, to keep humans contained before they grew powerful enough to challenge the balance. After that, communication became unstable. Sometimes the voice disappeared for weeks, then returned with new questions or warnings. The crew never saw any physical beings, only the great light structures that seemed to move like living machines. They weren't sure if those were ships or something else. One night everything went quiet. The strange light in the sky faded, and the stars looked normal again. The dauntless crew waited, unsure if the Empire had left or was still watching. They couldn't risk returning home. Their engines were damaged by the field, and the only thing they could do was wait and hope that Earth would come for them. And now, finally it had. As the two crews finished exchanging stories, the engineers from the second ship began helping repair the Dauntless. They replaced broken panels, shared power, and reactivated the main systems. For the first time in years, the old ship came alive again. The lights brightened and the hum of energy filled the corridors. Despite the tension, there was happiness. People laughed, cried, and recorded messages to send back home. They didn't know if the Empire was still out there watching, but for now, they felt safe. That feeling didn't last long. While the repairs were being done, one of the sensors on the second ship picked up movement. Something was approaching, fast. The readings didn't match any known object. It wasn't a meteor or debris or a natural phenomenon. It was something controlled. The crew looked out of the observation window and saw lights flickering in the distance. At first, they thought it might be another part of the Dauntless coming online. But then the lights multiplied, forming patterns, circles, triangles, moving with perfect coordination. It wasn't random. It was a formation. The captains ordered both ships to power down non-essential systems, hoping to avoid attention. But it was too late. The mysterious formation stopped right in front of them, and once again the voice returned, calm but colder than before. "You were told to stay away. Why do you continue to cross our line?" The captain of the new ship stepped forward and spoke clearly. "We came only to retrieve our people." "We mean no harm." There was silence. Then the voice replied, "Your actions are not of peace. Curiosity is your weapon, and it will destroy you." The words sent shivers through everyone, yet the captain didn't back down. "Curiosity built everything we are. Without it, we would still be living in darkness. If that is our weakness, then we accept it." The room fell silent again. The crew waited for a response, but none came. Instead, the lights outside began to pulse in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. A strange wave of energy passed through the ships, making the metal vibrate and the air shimmer. Then something unexpected happened. The image of a figure appeared in front of them, not physically, but as a projection of light. It looked vaguely humanoid, tall and graceful, its form shifting between solid and transparent. It had no face, but somehow, everyone could feel that it was watching them closely. It spoke, but not with words. The voice echoed directly in their minds. "You have courage," it said softly. "That is rare among young species." No one dared to speak. The figure moved closer, its light brushing across the walls, scanning everything. Then it said something that changed everything. "Perhaps your kind deserves a chance to prove your intentions. Follow us." With that, the figure vanished, and the lights outside began to move away slowly, creating a clear path through the darkness. The crews exchanged uncertain glances. It could be a trap, but it could also be the opportunity humanity had been waiting for. After a short discussion, both captains agreed. They would follow. The two ships aligned and began to move, engines humming quietly. The lights ahead guided them through a field of drifting particles that glowed like dust in sunlight. The space around them seemed to bend slightly, colors shifting from blue to violet as they went deeper. Hours passed in silence. The crew members stared out the windows, mesmerized by what they were seeing. Then ahead of them, a massive structure came into view. Something so large it could have been mistaken for a planet. It rotated slowly, surrounded by rings of light and smaller objects orbiting around it like satellites. "This is it," whispered one of the scientists. "The heart of the Empire." The ship slowed as they approached. The voice spoke again. "You have come further than any of your kind. But before you may enter, you must understand what you face." The lights around the structure brightened, forming images in space, scenes from across galaxies. Worlds that had once been free now stood silent, their skies filled with the same glowing ships. The Empire had brought peace, but through control, not choice. The figure's voice returned. "We bring order to chaos. Your species must decide, will you join the order or will you remain a threat?" The humans didn't answer right away. They looked at each other, realizing this was no longer just an exploration. It was a test of who they truly were. And in that quiet moment, as the stars burned faintly around them, Humanity stood at the edge of the greatest choice in its history: to submit to the Empire's control or to stand free, no matter the cost. The journey that began with a single signal had now become something far greater. It was no longer just about reaching the stars. It was about proving humanity's spirit to the universe itself, and the next step would decide everything. The two human ships floated quietly before the enormous structure that filled half their sky. It was difficult to tell what it really was. From a distance it looked like a glowing planet, but up close it seemed alive, constantly shifting, changing shapes, forming new layers of light and shadow. No one could stop staring. Even the most experienced crew members were speechless. They had traveled across the endless dark to find something, and now that they had, words felt useless. It wasn't fear that froze them. It was the realization of how small they were compared to what they were seeing. The voice that had guided them here spoke again, calm and clear. You stand before the assembly of Varn. Few have come this far. Fewer still have returned. The message echoed inside every mind. It didn't feel threatening this time. It felt ancient, like something that had existed for longer than time itself. Both captains ordered their ships to hold position. A smaller beam of light reached out from the structure, surrounding both ships in a soft glow. One of the scientists whispered that it wasn't a weapon. It was some kind of scanning field. The sensors confirmed that it wasn't causing any damage. Then, slowly, a tunnel of light opened ahead of them. The voice returned. "Follow, your trial begins." The crews exchanged nervous looks. Nobody wanted to make the first move. But turning back wasn't an option. The two ships moved forward together, engines humming quietly as they entered the tunnel. Inside, everything was color and motion. The walls around them looked fluid, as if made of living energy. Shapes and symbols flowed through the light, patterns that seemed to tell a story. One of the crew members said it looked like history being played out in front of them. And it was. The walls showed scenes of civilizations long gone, planets rising, flourishing, and then falling into war, species building empires and then destroying themselves. Over and over again, the story repeated, until the Empire appeared. The scenes showed how it brought order to the chaos, ending conflicts and rebuilding worlds under one rule. It was breathtaking, but also unsettling. Everything looked peaceful, yet it felt forced, like the life had been drained from those worlds in exchange for quiet. When the ships finally stopped, they found themselves inside a vast chamber made of glass-like material. The space stretched endlessly, with stars visible through transparent walls. Floating above them were hundreds of glowing figures, different shapes and sizes, like the one they had seen earlier. The humans realized these were the Empire's representatives, perhaps leaders from many different species. They didn't speak with voices. Instead, their thoughts merged into one single unified presence. "You have crossed into our domain," the voice said again, though now it sounded like a chorus of many beings speaking as one. "You stand before the order that guards balance in this galaxy. You must answer a question that will decide your fate." The captains stepped forward, standing side by side. The entire human group waited, hearts pounding. The voice asked, "Why did you come?" The words were simple, but the weight behind them was immense. One of the scientists took a deep breath and said, "Because we needed to know if we were alone. We came to learn, to understand." The glowing beings remained silent. Then another voice joined in, softer, different from the rest. "Curiosity is a beginning, but many have said the same before you. Their curiosity brought destruction." The first captain spoke next. "We didn't come to destroy. We've made mistakes in our own world, but we've learned from them. We came with open hands, not weapons." For a long time, nothing happened. Then the walls around them changed again, showing images of Earth, oceans, cities, forests, and the glowing web of satellites orbiting the planet. The humans realized the Empire had been watching them for years. "You speak of peace," the voice said. "Yet your world still fights among itself. You still pollute your skies and harm your own kind. How can you bring peace beyond your world when you do not have it within?" The question struck deeply. No one could deny it. Earth wasn't perfect, it never had been. But they weren't here to defend perfection. The second captain stepped forward. "We may fight. We may make mistakes. But we also heal, we forgive, and we dream. Our strength is not in what we are, but in what we try to become." The chamber grew brighter. The glowing figures shifted slightly, as if whispering among themselves in silence. Then, one by one, they turned their light toward the humans. Finally, the main voice spoke again. "You are bold. Many before you begged for mercy. You stand and speak with hope. Hope is dangerous, but also powerful." The walls changed once more, showing distant galaxies filled with light. The voice continued, "Your kind is young. You stand on the edge of greatness or ruin. The Empire exists to prevent chaos from spreading again. We have seen what happens when ambition goes unchecked." The first captain replied quietly, "Then maybe it's not chaos you fear. Maybe it's change." That sentence lingered in the air. It wasn't meant as defiance, it was truth. Humanity's nature was to change, to grow, to explore. The Empire, despite all its power, seemed afraid of that. The glowing figures dimmed for a moment. Then the voice said, "Perhaps you are right. But the rules of balance cannot be broken easily. You may not claim this region, yet we will allow you to return, to tell your world what you have seen." Relief filled the room. The humans looked at each other, half disbelieving. After all the warnings, after all the fear, they were being allowed to leave, but the voice wasn't finished. "We grant you this mercy once. The next time your kind crosses this boundary without permission, there will be no return. Do you understand?" Both captains nodded slowly. "We understand." The glowing chamber began to dissolve around them, fading into darkness. The two ships were suddenly surrounded by stars again. The great structure that once filled their sky was now distant, almost invisible. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence of space felt heavier than ever. They had survived something beyond comprehension. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like awakening. As they began to turn back toward the path home, a faint message appeared on their screens. It wasn't in words, but in symbols. When decoded, it read, "Curiosity can light or burn. Choose wisely." Back on the Dauntless, the crew worked to stabilize the engines. The second ship stayed close, ensuring they didn't lose each other again. The long journey home would take years, but now they had something even more important than discovery. They had understanding. During the return, the crews often talked about what they had seen. Some believed the Empire was truly peaceful, protecting life from its own mistakes. Others thought it was simply afraid of anything new, afraid of losing control. One thing was certain. Humanity had been noticed. From now on, the stars were no longer silent. When they finally sent a message back to Earth, it was short, but it carried meaning that would echo for generations. "We met them. They are real. They are watching. But they are not our enemies. We have a chance to prove who we are." The transmission took years to reach Earth, but when it did, it changed everything. People didn't see the warning as fear anymore. They saw it as a challenge, a reminder that the universe wasn't just a place to explore, but a place to earn a place in. The two ships continued their journey home, carrying stories no one else had ever lived to tell. Behind them, somewhere far beyond human sight, the lights of the Empire faded quietly, as if satisfied. For now, and though they didn't know it yet, humanity had already begun to prepare for what would come next. Not a war, not an invasion, but a meeting of equals. Because once you've looked into the eyes of the universe and spoken without fear, you can never go back to being small. The Dauntless and its companion ship drifted together through the dark, engines glowing softly. Ahead lay home, behind lay infinity, and somewhere in between humanity's destiny waited, bright, uncertain, and alive. The long journey back to Earth was quiet, almost too quiet. After what the two ships had seen, space didn't feel the same anymore. Every star, every faint light in the darkness seemed alive now, as if watching them. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The crews followed their usual routines, checking systems, recording data, and keeping each other company. But behind every conversation was the same unspoken thought. What did the Empire's message really mean? Curiosity can light or burn. Choose wisely. Those were the words left for humanity, simple but full of mystery. Some thought it was a warning to stop exploring. Others believed it was a challenge, an invitation to prove that humans could grow without destroying. During the long silence between stars, the crews began to study every bit of data they had gathered. The scientist who had first detected the signal spent countless hours decoding fragments of what they had seen inside the glowing structure. Every sound, every light pattern, Every vibration might contain meaning. One day, something strange happened. The communication screen on the Dauntless flickered. A repeating signal appeared, one that matched a frequency used by the Empire's light tunnel. But this one wasn't coming from behind them. It was coming from ahead, toward Earth. At first, everyone thought it was an error, but the data was clear. The signal was real, faint, but consistent. It was as if something, or someone, had sent a message back home long before the ships even started their return. They tried decoding it for days. When the translation finally made sense, the message shocked everyone. It said, "The Watchers have always been near. Your skies hold what you do not see." The crew exchanged nervous looks. If the Empire had been near Earth all along, then humanity hadn't just met them. They had been observed for centuries. The captains decided to keep the discovery quiet for now. Panic wouldn't help anyone. Their mission was still to return safely and share the truth carefully. But deep down, everyone knew the universe had already changed forever. As they got closer to the solar system, the sight of their own sun filled them with emotion. It was small and warm compared to the cold emptiness they had crossed. For the first time in years, they saw colors that reminded them of home. The soft yellow light, the deep blue of Earth waiting in the distance. But as they approached, their scanners picked up something unexpected. Floating just beyond the orbit of Mars was a strange object. It wasn't a ship, not a planet, not a natural formation. It was a structure, perfectly still, covered in light, silent but alive. It looked almost identical to the glowing shapes they had seen inside the Empire's domain. The crews froze. None of them could believe it. The Empire had left something behind. Or perhaps it had been there all along. One of the engineers whispered, "It's like they're watching from our doorstep." The captains debated what to do. Should they approach it, or leave it alone and report to Earth first? After what they'd experienced, they knew approaching unknown technology could be dangerous, but the structure didn't seem hostile. It just floated there, like a guardian. When they turned their sensors toward it, the readings showed something strange. The structure wasn't made of metal or stone. It was made of energy shaped into form, like light given solid shape. Then the same calm voice that had spoken in the Empire's chamber echoed in their minds again. "You returned as promised. You did not run, nor did you bring war. Your actions have been seen." Everyone went still. The communication lines buzzed softly, as if space itself was speaking. The voice continued, "Your kind stands at a turning point. The Empire will not interfere with your world. Not yet. But you must prepare. The balance will soon change." Before anyone could ask what that meant, the light around the structure flared and vanished. It didn't explode or fade. It simply blinked out of existence, leaving nothing behind but the cold stars. The crews sat in silence for a long time. No one spoke. Everyone understood the same thing. This wasn't over. Whatever balance meant, it was tied to something bigger than they could imagine. When the ships finally reached Earth, they were welcomed like heroes. The world had been waiting for their return for years. Every news channel, every nation, every person wanted to hear their story. But telling it wasn't easy. They couldn't just say, "We met the Galactic Empire." It sounded impossible. So they chose their words carefully. They described what they had seen, but they focused on the message, the warning about curiosity, the importance of balance, and the idea that humanity wasn't alone. Some believed them instantly. Others called it a trick or illusion. Governments debated what to do. Scientists demanded proof. The crews provided recordings, sensor data, and visual evidence, enough to make even the most skeptical experts stop and think. Over time, the truth spread. Humanity began to realize that they weren't the center of the universe, just a small part of something far larger. But instead of causing fear, it inspired hope. Young people started studying astronomy and physics in record numbers. Artists painted what the crews had seen, the glowing tunnels, the great chamber, the beings of light. Philosophers debated what balance meant. But hidden deep within the data collected from the journey One scientist found something everyone had missed. Embedded in the background frequency of the Empire's final message was another layer of sound, faint, almost invisible. After months of decoding, it turned out to be coordinates. They pointed to a place just beyond Neptune, far, far from where any human probe had gone before. The discovery changed everything again. It meant the Empire hadn't just warned them, it had invited them somewhere else. When the information reached the Global Council, a new mission was proposed. This time it wouldn't be 2 ships. It would be one united human expedition, built by every nation together. They would call it Project Horizon. The original crews were asked to lead it. Some hesitated. They had already faced the unknown once and barely made it back. But deep down they all knew the same truth. Humanity couldn't stop now. One of the engineers said quietly during a meeting, "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. They're giving us a choice, to learn or to fear." That became the heart of Project Horizon's mission statement, to learn without fear. Construction began immediately. The world poured its resources into building the largest and most advanced ship ever created. Unlike before, this time the mission wasn't kept secret. Children grew up watching the progress every day, dreaming of joining the stars. Years passed. The ship was completed, sleek, silent, and powerful, with technology inspired by the data brought back from the first journey. On the day of its launch, billions of people watched as it rose into the sky. The captains who had once faced the Empire stood together, older but stronger. They didn't promise victory or discovery. They simply promised to try. As the ship disappeared into the black, carrying humanity's new hope, the same words from long ago echoed quietly through their minds once more. Curiosity can light or burn. Choose wisely. No one knew what waited beyond Neptune or whether the Empire truly wanted peace or control, but one thing was certain. Humanity had already crossed the line between fear and wonder. They were no longer just explorers of space. They were participants in something cosmic, something that tied every living being together. The stars no longer looked like distant points of light. They looked like paths, roads leading to questions that could change everything. And though the first explorers had returned home, they knew the journey was far from over. Somewhere in the darkness, the watchers were waiting, silent, patient, and maybe, just maybe, hopeful too. The great ship Horizon moved silently through the endless dark. Its engines glowed softly, leaving behind a thin trail of light as it crossed the edge of the solar system. Inside, hundreds of crew members worked together, scientists, engineers, pilots, and explorers from every part of Earth. The mission was clear, but no one truly knew what waited for them. They were following coordinates left by the Galactic Empire, the same beings who had once warned humanity not to come near. Yet now it seemed they had opened a door. For months, the crew lived among the stars, far from home. They had grown used to the silence of space, but there was something different about this journey. Every person on board felt a quiet weight in their chest, a mix of fear and excitement. The ship's main observation window showed the black ocean of space stretching endlessly ahead. The stars barely moved, and the sun had shrunk into a pale dot behind them. One of the young technicians often stood by the window staring for hours. "It's strange," he said once during a meal. "We're going farther than anyone ever has, and yet it feels like we're being expected." The others nodded. They all felt it too, that quiet sense of being watched, not by something hostile, but by something waiting. Weeks passed, and finally, they reached the edge of Neptune's orbit. Beyond it lay darkness, a region where human instruments had always failed to read properly. The coordinates they followed pointed straight into that void. The closer they got, the stranger their readings became. The sensors showed movement, but there was nothing visible. The space around them began to shimmer slightly, as if invisible waves were bending light. Then suddenly the stars disappeared. The crew gasped as the darkness around them changed. The ship's systems flickered for a moment, and then everything went still. It was as if they had entered a space within, a hidden layer of reality. Before them appeared a sight no one could have imagined. Floating, In the void was a structure far larger than any planet. Sphere made entirely of light and energy. It pulsed gently as though it had a heartbeat. Everyone fell silent. They had seen pictures of the Empire's old structures from the first mission, but this one was different. It felt alive. A voice filled the air, calm, familiar, and vast. "You have come again. You have chosen light." The captain stepped forward, her voice steady. "We followed your signal." "You left coordinates? Why?" The light around the sphere shifted. Slowly it began to open like petals unfolding. Inside was a smaller sphere glowing softly. The voice spoke again. "The Empire does not seek to rule all. It seeks to protect the balance of life. But there are forces beyond even our reach. We watch to guide those who may one day join the guardians of that balance." The crew exchanged glances. One of the scientists whispered, "Are they saying we're being tested?" The voice continued as if answering the thought. "You are not tested by us. You are tested by your choices. Every world, every species reaches a point where its curiosity can build or destroy. Many failed. Few learned." The ship's lights dimmed slightly as the entire structure brightened. It was as if the energy around them was responding to their presence. Images began to form in the light. Galaxies swirling, stars being born, planets forming. Then slowly, images of civilizations appeared, and some beautiful, some terrifying. Worlds thriving in peace and others tearing themselves apart through greed and pride. The voice spoke again, softer now. "Once there were others like you. They reached for the stars too quickly. They awakened powers they could not control. We came to stop the spread of their destruction. That is why we exist." A silence filled the room. Everyone felt the same chill. The Empire wasn't just an empire, it was a guardian force born out of necessity. The captain asked quietly, "And us? Why call us here?" The light pulsed once. "Because your kind stands where they once stood, between wisdom and ruin. You reached into the dark not to conquer, but to understand. That is why you are here." The crew felt both honored and overwhelmed. For centuries, humans had looked to the stars dreaming of meeting others. But now, standing before the Empire again, they realized this meeting wasn't about power or technology. It was about trust. The voice continued, "We cannot guide you forever. The galaxy is vast and its harmony must be kept. But there are shadows, old remnants of those who failed. They move in silence, seeking to awaken what should remain asleep." The ship's sensors began to pick up strange readings again, faint distortions in the fabric of space. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Are you saying something is coming?" the captain asked. "Yes," the voice replied. "And when it comes, your world must be ready. The Empire cannot interfere directly. The guardians must arise from among those who still remember what hope means." Everyone went silent. The captain slowly said, "You mean us?" The light pulsed brighter, almost warm this time. "Not just you. All of your kind. Those who choose to build, not destroy. Those who listen, not just speak." The structure around them shifted again, and the smaller glowing sphere detached from its core. It floated toward the horizon slowly. "This," the voice said, "is a seed of knowledge. It holds what your kind needs to understand, not to rule, but to protect. Guard it well, for once it awakens, the path ahead cannot be turned back." The crew watched in awe as the glowing sphere entered their ship. It passed through the walls as if made of mist, settling gently in the center of their research chamber. Its light was soft, calm, almost like a heartbeat. The voice grew quieter. "You have chosen curiosity. You have chosen light. But remember our first words. Curiosity can light or burn. The choice remains yours." Then, as before, the great sphere of light began to fade. The stars reappeared one by one. The ship's systems returned to normal. The crew found themselves drifting once again in ordinary space near Neptune's orbit, but now carrying something the universe itself had trusted them with. For a long time, no one spoke. The crew simply watched the glowing sphere in silence. It pulsed slowly like a living thing, waiting. Back on Earth, months later, when the horizon returned, the world celebrated again. But this time, the excitement was mixed with deep reflection. Humanity had not only met the Galactic Empire, they had been given a role in something far greater. The scientists carefully studied the glowing sphere. It emitted a soft hum, impossible to measure, impossible to explain. But when they placed their hands near it, they could feel warmth, almost like it was responding to their thoughts. Some believed it contained knowledge of advanced science. Others said it was a message, something that would only reveal itself when humanity was ready. As the years passed, strange things began to happen. The more humanity worked together, solving conflict, sharing discoveries, helping each other, the stronger the sphere's glow became. It was as if it was feeding on unity, responding to the goodness within them. But when nations argued or old rivalries reignited, the sphere dimmed, its hum fading to silence. People began to call it the heart of light. It became a symbol, not of power, but of balance. And one quiet night when the stars were clear, the same voice that had spoken to the explorers was heard again. Not through machines, not through ships, but in the dreams of those who listened, it said only one thing. The balance grows strong. Keep walking the path of light. From that night on, humanity changed. Space exploration continued, but now it carried purpose. They built observatories not just to search for life, but to protect it. They shared knowledge freely. They remembered that power meant nothing without harmony. The Empire never returned. But somehow everyone knew it was still out there, watching, guiding from afar, waiting to see if humanity would truly become what they believed it could be. And deep in space, beyond the reach of any telescope, the great glowing structures of the Empire shimmered quietly, like distant suns keeping watch. Because the moment humanity chose curiosity over fear, something inside the universe itself seemed to shift. They were no longer just visitors among the stars. They had become part of the story. A story older than galaxies, now carried forward by a species that once looked up at the sky and simply wondered, "Are we alone?" The answer had come, and it was more beautiful, more powerful, and more human than anyone could have ever imagined.